3 foot.
9 o'clock on Wednesday, May 24th, 2023. This special meeting of the Iroquois County Board. Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Alt.
Here.
Behrens. Spence.
Here.
Bowers.
Yes.
Crow. Present. Ducat.
Here.
Geiger.
Yes.
Hughes.
Yes.
McGinnis. McTaggart. Awful. Sure.
Yep.
Watts. Whitlow. Williams.
Yes.
Zumwalt.
Present.
Okay, this morning we're blessed to have Pastor Ryan Mustard from Trinity Church here to lead us in prayer. Pastor Ryan.
Thank you. I'll start briefly to explain part of my prayer. My heart is heavy this morning. We have a close family friend that lives in the town. He and his mother are people of color, and yesterday at school, he was attacked by a fellow classmate, slapped and called a nigger. And because he defended himself, he is suspended for the day. He's supposed to be in Springfield learning about Abe Lincoln and how the slaves were freed. And instead he winds up suspended at home with his mom, grieving the way that he was attacked yesterday. So I appreciate each one of you. I appreciate all you do. And my prayer will be that our community can be a place where everyone is welcome. So thank you for all that you do to help ensure that. Heavenly Father, I thank you for each one who's gathered here today. Lord, I thank you for the hard work and diligence that they put into helping our community thrive, our community being not just the buildings and the spaces and the businesses, which are all very important, but also the people. And Lord, we know it grieves your heart when your people treat one another in this way. And so I pray for this group, Lord, that you would empower them to look after those who are marginalized, to look after those who are hurting. Lord, thank you for them. Bless them, encourage them. I want to pray specifically for our family friend, that you'd minister to their heart, that they would know that they are loved here, and that they would know that they are loved by you. And so thank you, Father, for showing the ultimate act of love by sending your Son, Jesus, in whose name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, each one of you. I appreciate all you do.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we need to call for the special meeting, please.
To Brian B. Suver, we, the undersigned members of the County Board of Iroquois County, Illinois, do hereby request you call a special meeting of the County Board of Iroquois County, Illinois, to meet at the Administrative Center in the city of Watseka, Illinois, on Wednesday, May 24th, 2023, at 9 a.m. for the purpose of approving revisions to the wind and solar ordinances. That was signed by John Schur, Barb Offal, Doug Geiger, Gerald E. Jed Whitlow, Raymond Williams, Lyle Behrens, Steve Hughes, Paul Ducat, John Zumwalt, Donna K. Crow, and D. Scott Watts.
Okay. Everybody has a copy of the agenda in front of them. Do we have a motion to approve that? Mr. Williams, seconded by Mr. Geiger. Are there any questions about the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And motion passes. Are there any public comments this morning? I don't see any public here, so we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which will begin with the minutes from the 2023 Tax and Zoning Committee meeting. Mr. Ducat.
Mr. Chairman and members of the County Board, the committee to whom is referred tax zoning would beg to leave to submit the following report for the matters before them. The committee met at the Administrative Center on May 16, 2023 at 9:24 a.m. Members present were Ducat, Awful, Geiger, Hughes. Jed Whitlow was absent. Also present, County Board Chairman John Shuren, Planning and Zoning Administrator Julie Feller. The meeting was called to order. It was moved by Awful and seconded by Steve Hughes to approve the agenda. Motion carried by a voice vote. There were no public comments. The draft wind ordinance was distributed to the committee. County Board Chairman Shure and Doug Geiger have continued to work diligently on the ordinance for wind and solar to comply with statute. The ordinance were also presented to State's Attorney Jim Devine for review. Devine offered changes and suggestions to the ordinance. Other county ordinances were also researched. Shure and Geiger began reviewing changes to the ordinance as follows. Solicitation. Any person intending to solicit a landowner in person for the lease, purchase, or use of property for a portion of commercial wind energy facility shall fill out an application to the zoning administrator prior to the contacting any property owner or owner's representative. The processing fee for the application is $100, and the applicant must pay a $1,000 fee for the permit, which is good for 1 year. Meteorological tower. If a meteorological tower is to be included in the site study, a permit shall be required from the zoning administrator for each tower. The application fee for each tower is $3,000. Sitting approval application. The sitting approval application shall be accompanied by the name, address, phone number, and electronic contact information of the applicant, facility owner, and operator, and all property owners, including their respective business structures. Dollar amounts have increased to $5,000 per milliwatt tower for up to and including the first 10 wind energy conversion systems, WECS, the WECS, towers of the project, and $2,000 per tower for each additional tower up to the maximum initial fee of $250,000. A paragraph was added stating if a wind tower is found to be in the direct path of an existing emergency communications physical structure, regardless of the frequency or frequencies, the wind tower shall be offset to a minimum of 500 feet out of the direct path of the emergency communications line of sight. Also, the zoning administrator shall obtain all required studies, reports, certifications, and approvals demonstrating compliance with the provisions of this ordinance. The applicant shall notify the zoning administrator of any changes to the information provided. Prior to the issuance of building permits, the building permit applicant must deposit a building permit fee equating to $10,000 per megawatt of nameplate capacity. All costs are to be paid by the applicant or facility owner. All road agreements shall be in place before the county board approval of the application and any building permits are issued. Copies of road arrangement agreements shall be provided to the Iroquois County engineer and zoning administrator. Design and installation. The wording in this section has been cleaned up and it states all WECS equipment should be manufactured within the United States of America. Electrical components. All electrical wire and lines connecting WECS to any other WECS or substation must be installed no less than 6 feet deep. The facility owner or operator of the WECS installation shall be a member of Julie and follows their rules and regulations. Climb prevention. Locked WECS tower doors was added to the ordinance. Setbacks. The setbacks remained the same as the original ordinance. State's Attorney Jim Devine recommended adding a paragraph stating, to the extent that any of the above setbacks are judicially determined to be invalid for any reason, the invalid setback shall be modified to comply with the corresponding setbacks set forth below. Also, all court costs will be paid for by the wind company. Minimum rotor or wind vane clearance. The lowest point of the arc creating the rotating wind vanes or blades on the wind turbine generator shall be no less than 15 feet measured from the highest point of the terrain within one blade radius from the base of the tower. Lighting. Applicant shall install aircraft detection lighting system or other similar technology to reduce light pollution and visual impacts caused by the WECS towers. Operation. Maintenance reports must be submitted on an annual basis to the zoning administrator. Coordination with the fire department. Rescue equipment must be provided new and kept up to date. Noise levels. Inspections will be performed at 90-day intervals on a 3-year basis. Shadow flicker shall not affect an occupied community building or non-participating residents more than 30 hours per year under planned operating conditions. Liability. The facility owner or operators of the WEX shall maintain a current general liability policy covering bodily injury and report damage with limits of at least $40 million per occurrence and $40 million in the aggregate. The county has a right to increase or decrease the amount of coverage. Decommissioning plan, a minimum cash deposit of $200,000, correct?
Yes.
For each tower shall be placed in an escrow account acceptable to and controlled by Iroquois County. The county has the right to sell any salvage material to reduce the county's expenses related to the decommissioning of any project site and shall be granted access to each site to effect or complete decommissioning. If escrow funds are not sufficient to cover the cost of the decommissioning, the shortfall shall fall upon the landowner. Defaults and remedies. Any violation of this ordinance shall be an offense punishable by a fine not to exceed $5,000 per day. LaSalle factors. This is a guideline for the county board to take into consideration when reviewing applications. It was moved by Hughes and seconded by Awful to adopt the wind energy conversion system ordinance and submit to the county board for approval. A roll call vote was taken, motion carried. The committee began review of the solar ordinance as follows. Solicitation, this language remained the same. Sitting approval application. Prior to processing any special use permit application for the commercial solar energy facility, the applicant must submit a certified check to the Iroquois County for the special use permit application fee equal to $5,000 per megawatt of proposed nameplate capacity up to a maximum fee of $250,000. Road agreements, all applications shall be accompanied by a preliminary map and plan showing the roads and right-of-way that they'll be utilized for both the construction, operation, and decommissioning of the solar power plant. Decommission plan. Prior to the issuance of building permits, the applicant must deposit a building permit fee equating to $10,000 per megawatt of total nameplate capacity. Foundations. A licensed Illinois professional engineer hired and paid for by the Iroquois County with the cost to be subtracted from the application fee shall certify that the foundation and design of the solar panels is within accepted professional standards. Power and communication lines. All power and communication lines outside the fence perimeter of the solar energy development must be buried no less than 6 feet. The owner or operator of the commercial solar facility shall be a member of Julie and follow their rules and regulations. Setbacks. There were no significant changes. Landscape plan. The equipment and structures shall be fully enclosed and secured by a chain link or equivalent fence with a minimum height of 8 feet and not more than 25 feet. Lighting. If lighting is provided at the site, it shall be shielded and downcast such that the light does not spill onto the adjacent parcel or residence. Noise. Noise levels must comply with the sound limitations set by the Illinois Pollution Control Board. Decommissioning plan. An update to the decommissioning plan shall be submitted to the county every 3 years. A minimum cash deposit of $40,000 per megawatt of nameplate shall be placed in an escrow account acceptable to and controlled by Iroquois County. Defaults and remedies. Any violation of this ordinance shall be an offense punishable by a fine not to exceed $5,000 per day. Severance, same language as the wind ordinance. LaSalle factors, same language as the wind ordinance. It was moved by Awful and seconded by Hughes to adopt the Iroquois County Solar Ordinance and submit to the Iroquois County Board for approval. A roll call vote was taken, motion carried. There was no old business, there was no new business, as there was no further business to come before the committee. It was moved by Awful and seconded by Hughes to adjourn at 10:42 a.m. Motion carried by a voice vote, all of which is submitted, and I ask for its submission.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve the report from the zoning committee, seconded by Mr. Williams. Do we have any questions or comments about the report?
Yeah.
Mr. Hughes, we'll start with you.
Okay. As a member of the zoning committee, I'd like to commend both Chairman John Schur and Doug Geiger, the member of the committee, for their dedicated work to bring the zoning thing into compliance with the new state legislation. I think it's unfortunate that the state has taken over zoning authority from the county to the state. That's all.
Mr. Watts?
What would be an example of LaSalle factors?
I think what that is adopted by the county, and that's to evaluate, does it meet the needs of the citizens of the county? Similar to what the zoning board of appeals goes through in their process, where they help them justify the approval of the land.
Okay.
I know there was a study from maybe 50 years ago as to how to do zoning. There were some standards you want to look at.
Okay.
Okay, we have one more, Mr. Bowers.
Yes, do the current wind and solar systems that we have in the county, do they comply with this?
No.
They don't, okay.
They don't comply with the changes that were made by the state
Okay,
at
so
the end of January.
we're just gonna grandfather them in, I guess?
No. What we tried to do was to revise both of them and make them compliant with the state, and yet at the same time, provide as much protection, if you will, for the citizens of the county that don't want to have a wind farm or a solar farm here. It's kind of a balancing act or a tightrope act, I guess you could say, but
One more question. Individuals that wanna put in, say, solar on the top of their barn, does this apply to them too?
no.
Okay.
It says in the ordinance, this does not apply to what we would call private solar. It's only commercial. Mrs. Crowe?
With the noise levels, inspections will be performed at 90-day intervals, intervals
Okay,
on a 3-year basis. Is there any teeth in the ordinance for violations of that? What happens if they do exceed it?
well, and that's a default, and it goes into the default remedies section as to how we determine to be handled. Every situation is a little bit different, so pretty much impossible to characterize everything. So if there's a default or remedy, it comes to the county board to determine how it's going to be handled. There's a system in there for fines for failure to comply and so forth. In some cases, I guess, I don't remember the exact wording, but it could even lead to having the project shut down.
In the decommissioning plan on the towers, it says if there's a shortfall, that it shall fall upon the landowner. Well, what's the chances of the landowner had a big bill of decommissioning the tower on his property?
What are the chances of that?
Yeah,
It's hard to say, but where else is the money gonna come from?
well, we've got a escrow account for it. That's not enough. Maybe it should have been more.
Well, that escrow account is updated every 3 years, so let's say at the end of 2.5 years, the thing gets shut down, and so in the decommissioning process, maybe it's $100,000 is short on each tower, whatever. And that's what, somebody has to pay that. That's something that the landowner needs to take into consideration when they sign the agreement.
Is that the original policy, or was this the state's policy?
No, this is something that we've added in, it's something that other counties are adopting as well. Much of what we have incorporated here is also being incorporated into the ordinances in Ford County and Livingston County and several other counties. So that's one of the things that in the state statute, it says that some of our fees and structures need to be reasonable and in line with what other counties are proposing or establishing, and that's again what we've done.
A clarification question. I know of one, with solar farm, that they're paying the landowners presently for an option, keep the option open for us, the solar farm. And I was wondering, at what point does the $1,000 fee come in, which is good for 1 year? I don't think they pulled any permits or anything, they're just keeping the option open. So I don't think they're subject to the $1,000 fee.
That's probably, you're right, that's something that's already occurred.
Right.
So we can't legislate against something that's already occurred. But going forward, anybody that comes in the county and wants to solicit, if they come and knock on your door or Charlie's door or whatever,
Yeah.
they need to have a permit from the zoning office allowing them to do that. And that's something that, again, is typical in communities and so forth all across the country to try and control people that are coming around and soliciting. Quite frankly, one of the reasons that we thought that's a good idea is because it's possible, I don't know if it's gonna happen, but it's possible we may be inundated with people coming around here banging on doors, trying to sign people up and so forth. You don't know who they are, or who they represent, or whatever. In order to try and have some organization and control over it, part of the reason that we got this.
Hence, so there were kids.
Right. Well,
Paul's question earlier about the existing, wind farms that we have. I didn't quite understand your answer. Do they not exist under the, ordinance that was in place at the time they came into being? And this really doesn't affect them, doesn't change anything for them?
doesn't change anything on anything that's existing. This applies to, from the time
Updates?
we adopt it going forward, anybody that comes in and submits an application.
Right, so in the event that one of the existing wind farms were to increase their megawatts or put on new turbines, then those improvements, would they come under this new?
It's two different questions you just asked.
Okay,
Because if they're replaced with like kind in there,
if it's the same,
then they don't need to come to us.
there's,
But if they would,
Like kind would be if some part where it's worn out and needs to be replaced.
I understand.
If they're gonna make some significant changes to upgrade and more capacity, tear a turbine down, put a bigger one up, what have you, that changes.
Then they come under this,
same if they want to add turbines to it,
that existing.
they'd have to come back.
So then their fees and permits would come under this one,
The new,
the new one.
Okay, I guess what I'd like to have us do is go ahead and have a roll call to approve the report, and then we're gonna have a separate motion to approve the new ordinances. So that being the case, let's call a roll for approving the report.
Benz,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Crowe,
Yes,
Ducat,
Yes.
Geiger,
yes,
Hughes,
Yes.
Sure,
Yes.
Watts,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Zumwalt,
Yes.
Alt.
Yes. Okay, at this time then, I would entertain a motion to approve the modifications and changes to the wind ordinance. Mr. Williams? Second by Mr. Bowers. Are there any questions or comments on the motion before us?
Is there a number on the ordinance?
There will be.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? And then we'll call the roll, please.
Bowers,
Yes.
Crowe,
Yes.
Ducat,
Yes.
Geiger,
Yes.
Hughes,
Reluctantly, yes.
Sure,
Yes.
Watts,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Zumwalt,
Yes.
Alt,
Yes.
and Benz.
Yes.
Okay, that being the case, now could I have a motion to approve the changes in the solar ordinance. Mr. Gilmore, seconded by Mr. Williams. Any questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk call the roll, please?
Crowe,
Yes.
Ducat,
Yes.
Geiger,
Yes.
Hughes,
Again, reluctantly, yes.
Sure,
Yes.
Watts,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Zumwalt,
Yes.
Alt,
Yes.
Benz,
Yes.
and Bowers.
Yes.
Okay, that pretty well takes care of our business this morning. Do we have any old business to come before the board? Mr. Williams?
I still have 3 extra large shirts. I also went to the Springfield for the UCCI meeting this month. And they had the Eagle Ridge Resort activity in Galena, July 24th and 25th. It's pretty much paid for, don't come out late. The Secretary of State gave a Zoom speech to us about the computerization and other functions of his office. So they're trying to improve and change a lot of things there. And there was further discussion as to funding for some of the specialized courts, for like the juvenile or the veterans or the drug courts. Today, some money is available for the county. I'll do more research on that.
Okay. Is there any other old business? Is there any new business to come before the board? We have a motion to adjourn. Mr. Williams, seconded by Mr. Hughes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Meeting is adjourned.